Growing up, I was weaned on a cocktail of video games and war movies, tales of heroism, bravery, and the thrill of the fight. My dreams saw me in fatigues, brandishing guns, battling imaginary foes. The very marrow of my being yearned for that adventure. So it was inevitable that when the time came, I enlisted in the Marines, chasing the mythos of the infantry. The rigorous drills, relentless training, and the crucible of tests made me question my choices many a time. But I survived them, carrying the weight of my decisions. Yucca Valley, a name that evokes not just the image of a parched landscape, but an ocean of desert. Spanning a colossal 930 square miles, this vast military landmass in Southern Carolina was my new abode. From here, Mexico was just a few hours away. Yet, amidst the desolation, we were more remote than one could imagine. Our routine was strenuous, bearing the heat that would make lesser men buckle. That fateful day saw the mercury soar to 130 degrees. It felt as though the sun itself had come down to challenge our spirit. We took solace under the deceptive safety of camouflage netting, sharing wisdom about military tactics. When darkness wrapped the land, our real trial began. The night exercises. With the aid of our night vision optics, the secrets of the night unveiled themselves. They turned the invisible visible, from the intricacies of map reading to the nuances of reloading weapons. In these quiet moments, the galaxy showed itself, a shimmering carpet of stars, interrupted occasionally by the fleeting journey of a shooting star. An awe-inspiring sight. But this wonder was short-lived. The tranquility of the night was interrupted by a wake-up call. My brief stint of rest was cut short. On watch duty now, alone, with only the distant howls of the coyotes and the silent chatter of the stars for company. And then in the distance, a figure. Another Marine, or so it seemed, was approaching me. He seemed ordinary enough, yet there was something off. His eyes, those eyes, they didn't catch the light the way they should. Ignoring my growing unease, I awaited his approach, but his voice, when he finally spoke, sent chills down my spine. "Can I come in?" he rasped. There was a certain hollowness to his tone. Trying to steady my nerves, I probed further. Who was this man? Why was he out here? But his answers were all the more unsettling. No Sergeant Miller was stationed with us. Panic gnawed at my heart as the main camp's confirmation echoed in my ears, warning of the unknown entity before me. In a heartbeat, the facade shattered. His visage contorted in a monstrous rage, reflecting unspeakable malice. I sprinted back, the very air around me thickening with dread. By the time I reached the main camp, chaos reigned. Lights flashed, men shouted, orders were barked. We fled the area with an urgency, leaving behind remnants of our encampment. And as dawn broke, when the dust settled, my squad leader, a man of few words, shared a grim revelation. The being I had encountered wasn't there to pass through the gates. It was there for something far more nefarious. From the unsettling vastness of the desert, my journey took me to a terrain of chilling heights, the mountains. Following my eerie encounter with the entity from the desert, we were dispatched to an even more isolating location, Sonora. Nestled in a national forest, a whisper away from Yosemite, Sonora was a Marine base designed to train souls like mine for mountain warfare. A landscape dotted with intimidating peaks, relentless cold, and biting winds, the perfect recipe for an ordeal. Our shelter there was humble, to put it mildly. Cold, stoic concrete huts which, aside from bunk beds, hosted the barest of amenities, bathrooms and showers. Our struggles were manifold. The constant battle for outlets to charge our gadgets. The lack of any semblance of warmth, save for the body heat of huddled Marines. But this was paradise compared to what awaited us outside. Adapting to Sonora was a challenge. The thin air, deficient in oxygen, made every task monumental. Simple exercises felt Herculean, and exhaustion became a constant companion. And amidst these discomforts, an unsettling absence of fresh food. But for those who could battle their mind, this was merely a phase. Soon we found ourselves journeying deeper into the mountains. Laden with packs filled to the brim, with food, warming layers, water, and the occasional guilty pleasure of nicotine, we trod on. Initial days were deceptive in their simplicity. hikes, rest, and survival lessons. The flurries of snow at lower altitudes seemed almost welcoming. Then, on a particularly bone-chilling night, an idea was floated. Testing our nighttime navigation skills. Equipped with compasses, maps, protractors, and a challenging route, we ventured forth, each at our own pace to avoid clumping. While navigating came naturally to me, the challenge wasn't the navigation itself, but the environment. The forest's embrace felt suffocating. Amidst this dark tapestry of trees and foliage, patches of moonlight became my beacon. But not every such beacon was a pleasant surprise. I vividly recall the rage as I found one such point in the middle of a river. The word donkey, mockingly etched on an ammo can perched atop a rock. The river's icy bite seeping into my boots was a reminder of the little joys of training. As I wrung my sodden socks, an uncanny sensation crept over me. The forest had fallen silent. All I could hear was the thudding of my heart. An eerie sensation of being watched gnawed at me. My mind darted between possibilities. A fellow Marine, or perhaps some wild predator. The subsequent moments were a blur of paranoia and heightened senses. Deliberately mismatching my steps, I tried to catch my unseen pursuer off guard. Though footsteps eluded me, the soft, predatory rhythm of breathing was unmistakable. Grasping my trusty knife, I pressed on, praying my final checkpoint. The road was close. The faint, distant rumble of a Humvee engine was a hopeful serenade, urging me to press on. In retrospect, I now recognize the grievous error of my actions. Unwittingly, I may have led that lurking entity straight to the heart of our group. That night, a cocoon of complacency enveloped us. Many found solace in the familiar trails, opting for roads as their guides back to the encampment. The rest, perhaps disoriented by the mountain's deceptions, oriented themselves to the beckoning of a beeping horn. Taking refuge in the encampment, the comfort of comradeship lulled me into a restful sleep. The following day, we delved into reviewing the skills we'd acquired the previous night. As the sun retreated, casting the world in a cloak of twilight, we marched once more into the mountain's embrace. As one bearing the weight of a rocket launcher, I found myself relegated to the rear end of the line. An ironic twist of fate placed me not at the very end, granting me a dubious blessing. The night thickened as we trekked. Gaps widened between us, stretching to a point where one could easily lose sight of the other. A profound fatigue started to permeate our ranks. Then, a palpable darkness ensued, as if the very soul of the night sought to smother any ambient light. A foreboding quiet, familiar yet more chilling, descended. I pressed on, driven by an inner urgency. A voice, presumably from the Marine behind me, called out my name. Puzzlement crossed his features when I glanced back, urging me to move faster to prevent getting left behind. Who had called out to me then? Attempting to regain my orientation, I sought to close the gap, yelling at the silhouette ahead, but it seemed my voice was swallowed by the void. An eerie whisper behind me, followed by the soft, disturbing symphony of rustling leaves and breaking twigs, accelerated my heartbeat. Panic fueled my steps, and before long, I stumbled upon a deserted pack and a lone rifle. Cries for my comrade went unanswered. My desperate attempts to summon help via radio or flashlight met with a disturbing stillness. It was as if the mountain had drained them of their life. The cacophony of my distress whistle rent the silence but attracted no aid. Time became an illusion, every second stretching infinitely. All the while, a sinister presence played a wicked game of hide-and-seek on the periphery of my senses. Relief came, albeit after what felt like eons. My comrades found me, their faces awash with skepticism and disbelief. The story I relayed met with dismissive attributions of fatigue or delusion. Their search for our missing member bore no fruit, until the morning sun cast light on a bizarre discovery. A park volunteer found him 30 kilometers away, a journey that spanned daunting terrains. His disheveled state spoke of harrowing experiences, bleeding ears, a foggy memory, rampant bruises, and the icy touch of hypothermia. In the aftermath, I was selected for a descent to provide my account. Internally, I sighed with relief. The biting cold and treacherous hikes had lost their allure. My fellow soldiers seemed content with the official version, a case of mountain sickness. But whispers of my experiences led to a terse warning from my squad leader, hinting at buried truths. The descent was uneventful, culminating at a nondescript concrete establishment. Initial questioning by the military police was routine, with them inquiring about any peculiar behavior from our lost and found comrade. All seemed mundane until agents from ACIA took charge. Their demeanor, devoid of warmth and marked by a meticulous precision, made me wary. They regurgitated the case details with a mechanical detachment, reminiscent of someone reading a grocery list. The ACIA agents bore expressions of stoic professionalism, their faces sculpted into a mask of calculated indifference. I got the impression they were familiar with whatever was transpiring, or at least had encountered something akin to it before. Their questions echoed the same narrative, a recitation about the eerie occurrences. Their response to my account? They hinted at mountain sickness, a diagnosis that dripped with condescension. It was almost laughable, but I knew better than to contest with authorities, especially in such circumstances. What truly baffled me were their next set of inquiries. "Did you take any photographs?" they queried. The strange notion of capturing the events on film hadn't even crossed my mind amidst the panic. Their insistence on swabbing my boots left me even more disoriented. What could they possibly be looking for? Had this entity, this force, left some sort of molecular signature behind? It was all too perplexing, like trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle with no guiding picture. Their final decree was binding me to silence with a legal document. It essentially gagged me from discussing the ordeal until they deemed fit, a time that has yet to come. Still, I harbored my own secret weapon, though it's a story I've chosen not to divulge. After the exhaustive interrogation, I sought refuge in the concrete accommodations provided, which boasted none of the luxury one would associate with rest. My only solace was the presence of a few comrades, grounded by their sickle cell anemia, rendering them susceptible to the dangers of high altitude. The embrace of a hot shower was the closest I came to nirvana that night. But sleep remained elusive. Desperate for a distraction, I turned to the occasional vice, a cigarette, typically reserved for bartering or quenching the thirst of nicotine-deprived peers. As the smoke curled upwards, the weight of that familiar, oppressive feeling bore down upon me. A quick glance confirmed my worst fears. It had trailed me here. Whether it was a singular entity or a legion, I dared not contemplate. The remnants of my cigarette met a hasty end under my boot. Seeking shelter indoors, I wrestled with fitful bouts of sleep, perpetually haunted by the sensation of unseen eyes monitoring my every breath. The cacophony of my distress whistle rent the silence but attracted no aid. Time became an illusion, every second stretching infinitely. All the while, a sinister presence played a wicked game of hide-and-seek on the periphery of my senses. Relief came, albeit after what felt like eons. My comrades found me, their faces awash with skepticism and disbelief. The story I relayed met with dismissive attributions of fatigue or delusion. Their search for our missing member bore no fruit until the morning sun cast light on a bizarre discovery. A park volunteer found him 30 kilometers away, a journey that spanned daunting terrains. His disheveled state spoke of harrowing experiences: bleeding ears, a foggy memory, rampant bruises, and the icy touch of hypothermia. In the aftermath, I was selected for a descent to provide my account. Internally, I sighed with relief. The biting cold and treacherous hikes had lost their allure. My fellow soldiers seemed content with the official version, a case of mountain sickness. But whispers of my experiences led to a terse warning from my squad leader, hinting at buried truths. Morning saw me engrossed in the task of loading our gear into the awaiting Humvee. A modest nap, punctuated by the vehicle's jarring movements, was my only reprieve. When consciousness returned, we found ourselves facing yet another challenge. The treacherous terrain of the mountainside coupled with a harsh sleet shower seemed like nature's way of saying, "Not today." The icy needles that struck our skin felt akin to shards of glass. Our compasses, reliable till now, behaved erratically, inexplicably drawn toward Angel's Crest, a place ominously labeled on a dated military map from the 1980s. And, as if to add to the litany of challenges, that uncanny sensation of being stalked returned, exacerbating my anxiety. Our guides, however, undeterred by the mysterious magnetic pull of Angel's Crest, directed us to our destination, Pelican's Peak. The moment we halted, fatigue manifested as violent shivers in many, the exertion of the hike no longer warding off the cold. But in this seemingly forsaken place, a silver lining appeared. Tents, driven up to the rendezvous point, awaited us. Someone had the foresight to predict our exhaustion and our need for immediate shelter. In the face of nature's wrath, we seldom took refuge in tents, but in that moment, it felt like our very existence teetered on the brink. The heavens unleashed their fury with a torrential downpour that drowned even the loudest of cries. The cacophony of rain, coupled with gusts that threatened to sweep everything away, made erecting the tents nearly an exercise in futility. Our struggles were rendered somewhat in vain, for by the time we had anchored them down, a pool of water lay in wait at their base. While our sleeping systems boasted of their waterproof properties, it meant little when our clothes were sodden, soaking the insides. Amidst this chaos, the military code of maintaining a watch persisted, and in the dwindling sunlight, I chose to shoulder this duty as my comrades sought shelter in their tents. A friend captured my pitiable state in a photograph. The rain-drenched dog tags, the waterlogged rain jacket, a snapshot of perhaps the most challenging day of my life. Returning to my tent, exhaustion lulled me into a restless slumber, but it was rudely interrupted. The voice I heard was familiar, yet dreadfully out of place. The same voice that had previously led one of our own astray, beckoning him miles away. The very voice that belonged to a man currently in medical care. Chillingly, this entity seemed to possess an uncanny knowledge of our names, and it whispered them, goading us into the torrent outside. The stern warnings of our squad leader reverberated in the tented enclosure, a fervent plea for us to resist the call of the nefarious being lurking outside. The entity continued its mind games, interspersing our names with an eerie quietness, and then, with an unsettling sense of finality, I heard my own name, not once but twice in a chilling, ghostly timbre. It was followed by an earth-shattering crash as a colossal tree was brought down, no doubt an act of malevolent force. The silence that ensued was more terrifying than the preceding chaos. Huddled in our tents, we remained paralyzed until the distant hum of engines and the crackle of the radio broke the spell. The orders were clear and urgent: dismantle and pack up within moments and make for the trucks. Hesitation gripped me initially, but as more braved the outside, I followed suit. The scene resembled a frenzied evacuation, with tents being hastily stowed away, poles bending, and bags being haphazardly slung over shoulders. The sheer urgency with which we boarded the trucks belied the official reason: adverse weather. Deep down, we all knew we were fleeing from something far more sinister. Back at the base, the relief of escape was palpable. Showers washed away the dirt, but not the memories. Fresh clothes brought warmth, but no comfort from the lurking fears. Words were scant as the team grappled with the events of that nightmarish day. And as sleep claimed us, there lay the looming realization that the mountains would beckon us again, and we would have to answer their call.